Hi, everyone. It's Janice, host of the Divorcing Religion podcast. Thanks for tuning into my show, whether you're joining me on audio or video. I've heard from some folks recently who have told me just how much the show has meant, and some of them have even found it not only to be life-changing, but life-saving as they Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious recovery consultant. Today, I'm talking with one of my favorite people about one of my favorite activities. That's right. I'm speaking with Dr. Darrel Ray, all about sex. So consider this your content warning. Dr. Darrel Ray is the founder and president of the board of directors of Recovering from Religion. He holds a master's degree in religion, a bachelor's degree in sociology, anthropology, and a doctorate in psychology. In addition to being a psychologist for a few decades now, Dr. Ray is the author of several books, including The God Virus, How Religion Infects Our Lives and Culture, and Sex and God, How Religion Distorts Sexuality. Darrel has spoken at several of my events, including the Shameless Sexuality Life After Purity Culture Conference, when he spoke about the sex addiction panic and its religious roots. Welcome, Dr. Ray.
Well, thanks for having me, Janice, and congratulations on your amazing interview with
Margaret
Atwood. I delayed watching it just because I wanted to sit down and really concentrate. And I did a couple nights ago. I thought, fuck, this is amazing.
Thank you so much. I was so nervous. She's such an icon, of course, a fellow Canadian.
Well, I wasn't nervous. I was jealous. I was very jealous.
She is so smart. Oh my gosh. She knows so much about history and politics and just a very, very intelligent person. So thanks for watching, and thanks for reminding everyone that they should watch that podcast episode.
That you should not watch us. I mean, you and I you come back to us, go watch that first.
That's right.
And I'm just going to say, I know a hell of a lot about the history that she talks about.
Yes.
I would almost say I'm an amateur expert in that area. And
nice.
She was on target. There wasn't anything wrong with what she said. She is really knowledgeable.
Oh, she is. And I feel like her voice needs to be amplified in this day and time, because the United States is having a moment, but it seems like the whole world is having a moment. You and I, however, we're going to be taking people away from that because we are going to be talking all about sex. And it's such a wonderful topic. And I was just refreshing myself reading your book again last night, Sex and God. And it's such a great book. When did you write it?
I wrote Sex and God in 2011 and got published in 2012.
Wow. Yeah.
Wrote The God Virus in 2028, and I got... it was published in 2009.
Right. What led you to write the Sex and God book?
Well, I've been interested in sex since I was 12 years old.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'm also fascinated. I got some old research that I did clear back in my late college, in my senior year of college, and it was about a Native American, North American tribe in the bottom of the Grand Canyon, the Havasupai. And I got that research out. I found it, after years of being a dusty old file, I find it, and I sat down, I reread this thing, and I think, this is damn good research. I was a lot smarter than I thought I was when I was in college. But one of the key things in that research was the sexual practices of the Havasupai Indians. And I had totally, it was in the back of my head, but rereading it said, oh, this is really interesting. And that all came together with some of my human sexuality training, some of my anthropology. So my minor was, I was virtually a double major in sociology and anthropology. And then my sex and religion training when I was in seminary. I went to an extremely liberal seminary, and got exposed to some really interesting angles in seminary on human sexuality. probably the first time I ever got comfortable with being around gay people, because about 40% of all the students were gay.
Wow.
And seminary, I thought this.
That's incredible.
Yes. So yeah, my conservative Christian belief structures started just getting regularly challenged with this research on the Havasupai and all the gay people and LGBTQ people I was meeting at the seminary. And I mean, this had been bubbling in the back of my mind since about 1972, 71.
Wow. Okay.
And then I wrote The God Virus in 2008-9, and it was so damn successful. And the one chapter that seemed to just trip everybody's trigger, I got more emails from that one chapter than I did anything else, and it was chapter 5 on sex and God. That's the name of the chapter.
Yeah.
And I just realized there's so many people out there who have been hurt by religion and their sex lives. Starting with, the day they learn about masturbation, that you're going to hell for touching yourself and that sort of stuff. Plus, as you probably know or remember, I was mentored in the late 1970s by Dr. Albert Ellis. And Ellis is today famous for his founding of basically cognitive therapy, is what we know it now. It's called rational emotive therapy back then. But he was probably more famous at that time as a sex therapist. A lot of people do not know that. I mean, he was even confused with Havelock Ellis, who was a 1920s, 1930s sex therapist, way ahead of his time, but still very primitive ideas about what sex and sex therapy would be. And here comes Albert Ellis with a totally different take on it. And I just, so I got trained by the best.
You really did.
But I was still a Christian, I still liberal, that sort of stuff, until I got divorced in 1988. And that helped me get away from some of the sexual restrictions that I was raised with.
Yeah. I have a little just curiosity around that. Did deconstruction factor in around the time you got divorced? I know for me, it did. My marriage couldn't withstand how everything was changing for me as my beliefs dropped away.
I was so damn liberal from the age of 12 years old. I didn't believe most of what I was being taught. And even though I got a degree, I actually preached. I preached in churches. It's hard to believe that I would be a preacher.
Wow. And lightning didn't strike you dead.
I didn't preach very much, but I did preach. And I have the distinction. I was a substitute preacher, but I have the singular distinction of having never been asked to come back twice to any church I ever preached in. Because I could preach a whole sermon and never mention Jesus. So that's how liberal I was. And that didn't go down too well. But getting divorced, as you well know, I'm sure, it was like a huge, huge burden lifted off my back. I had I didn't have to follow these restrictions. I didn't have to pretend. I wasn't following them, that's for sure. But at the same time, I didn't have to pretend. Now, I did follow. So I had a great deal of integrity in my relationships. I never cheated in any time when I was married. Boy, I sure wish I had, though, in retrospect.
Oh my God.
No, I'm only half kidding, but the getting, and my ex-wife and I are still on good terms, and we've got 2 great kids and 2 great good grandkids, and it's all good. But we, as my own daughter told me, Dad, I don't know how you two ever got together, because we didn't belong together. We're both good people. She's still a Christian, but she's a super liberal Christian, and she goes to the second most liberal church in the whole metropolitan area.
Excellent.
2 million people here, and she's so, and of course I'm way farther out than that.
Yeah.
But I think we both, as a married couple, suffered from the religious ideologies. Both she and I, and I think she suffered maybe even more than I did. So I'm not. I think a lot of marriages suffer because of the religious ideology around human sexuality.
Oh, yeah. And that was something I found really interesting in your book. So you had done an online poll of 14,560 secular people, and you found that the denominations that heap on the most guilt about sex are Pentecostal, Jehovah's Witness, and Mormon. And the least guilt seems to come from the Unitarian and Judaism, which I'm assuming is Reform Judaism, because we know the Orthodox Judaism. There's a lot of guilt there.
Yeah, well, they don't even have the internet, so they couldn't go on our
That's right.
Yes, and if you want to see, I only put 5 pages in the book, but that is a 48-page report. There's a hell of a lot more than I put in the book. And if your listeners want a copy, I can send it to them, or I can send it to you, and you can send it on. It's available free on the internet. You can just look sex and secularism and my name, and it'll probably come right up.
Very, very good. I think it's so powerful. And one thing also that you had said in there, the best thing you can do for your sex life is to leave religion. And I thought, amen. That's exactly right. The best thing you can do, because there are so many rules and there's so much pressure put on us about our bodies and sexuality and what's allowed and what's not allowed and what's considered deviant. It's entirely too much pressure. And even the concept of monogamy. I know you sent me a really interesting video recently, and there was a woman who was talking about, for women, sex, it can be like a switch, an on switch, an off switch, and different things can impact it. I'm in my 50s now, and so I'm looking at, well, what's, possibly going on with me as far as hormones go. But you had a really interesting insight and thought around that as well, for why sometimes when you've been with the same partner, for 20 years, it's monogamy can start to get a little boring.
It's just called the satiation effect, and it's common. We all know it. It's not anything. If I told you you love steak, but okay, now you have to eat steak the rest of your life, you'd probably be sick of steak in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that's what it is. Humans like variety. I mean, think about all the ways we spend a lot of time and a lot of money on variety in our lives. I mean, you don't get up and put the same clothes on every day. Even if they were totally clean every day, you still wouldn't put the same clothes on. Mm-hmm. You don't get up and think, I'm going to eat the same food today that I ate yesterday. We're always looking for variety, and it stimulates us. Well, that's what sex needs too. In order to be stimulated, you've got to have some variety in your sex life. And boy, religion says no, you have to have the same sex partner for your whole life. Well, it's no different than saying you have to have steak for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And you're probably going to rebel against that in some way. Or clinically speaking, you're going to express that lack of variety in inappropriate ways. I mean, look at Catholic priests raping young children.
It's terrible. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good example of somebody taking a perfectly normal, natural desire that's been perverted by the Catholic Church and abusing it and abusing people as a result of that desire. Mm-hmm. And I think you see that a lot in married couples that, quote, have a cheater. One or both people cheat. I'm not an advocate of cheating. However, I've seen a number of places and times when I thought, well, makes sense. Why wouldn't a person cheat in that situation? And do you want me to go on? I can go on forever on this.
Well, I think it's interesting to note how over really, I'm thinking the past 10 years or so, the whole idea of ethical non-monogamy has really started bubbling up to the surface to be something that, is spoken of in mainstream circles. Yeah. People are hearing about it and wondering about it. And I know for me, working with clients recovering from religious trauma, so many of us married young, and we married because we couldn't have sex until we were married. And the person we married, we simply married because they went to our church or they were part of our religious group, and we were attracted to them. But years later, and as you deconstruct from that same belief system, you're looking at that person going, why did I marry this person? The only reason I married them is because the pastor said that's the person that I should marry. Mm-hmm. And so then people are questioning whether they want to stay married, whether they what it would look like if they were to open up or change the dynamic of the marriage. And some even wondering, am I even straight? I mean, my parents and my church and everybody insisted that I have to be a heterosexual person, but maybe that's not actually who I am. So there are so many questions that go along with deconstructing from religion when we're talking about marriage and sexuality.
Absolutely. There's so much you don't know about yourself when you're 20 years old. Certainly not when you're 15 years old. And so to force, and what religion does is it puts us in a cocoon and slams the door shut and puts several locks on it. And if you can't get out of that cocoon, the minute you find a way to crack that cocoon open and look outside, you can realize there's a whole world of sexuality. And it's not just sex, it's a whole world of things that may or may not relate to sex, but it's a panoply of options. And some people get scared by too many options. They go back in the cocoon, which is fine. I mean, if you want to stay in the cocoon, fine, but don't condemn other people when they find that there's a bigger world out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, how many people have you as a clinician, and I as a clinician, had come to us and say, I love my husband, or I love my wife, but I'm gay, or I'm bisexual, and I want to explore that. Mm-hmm. Well, the Christian contract, with all of its invisible ink, because there's a lot of invisible ink in the contract, simply doesn't allow, and this is the key concept, Christian marriage does not allow for renegotiation. There is no negotiating with that contract. And that was the problem with me and my wife. We both knew our sexual lives were miserable in different ways, of course, but we were still miserable.
Was it always so, or just as time went on?
Well, after the honeymoon period was over, which was less than a year for us,
yeah,
it was over. I stayed married for almost 18 years. Mm-hmm. We stayed married for 18 years.
Same.
I don't want to in any way come off like I'm pointing my finger at my former spouse, because that is not the case at all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We both were miserable. Even my own daughter, as I said earlier, how did you guys? So it was obvious in some ways, and yet we stayed happily married, but in this sense that everyone around us thought we were happily married. We put on a great show. Mm-hmm. We were good performers. But man, I tell you, the minute I got divorced, I found out my sex life improved 17,000% within months after my sex. And because I had bought into the mythology around women don't like sex, or women can only tolerate so much sex. I mean, there was lots of mythology that comes with the Christian purity culture, or sex is only for procreation. I mean, there's all these things. Whether I believed it or not, I was still confined to that cocoon. Boy, I'll tell you, I was out. When I got out, I was out. I was never going back.
And I think some people then, I know for me, it was really strange after being married and very Christian for almost 20 years, when I entered the dating world. And of course, the internet wasn't a thing when I got married. And then when I was divorcing, the internet was a thing, and dating apps and stuff. And I just had no idea. It was almost overwhelming. And I think a problem that I had that maybe others could relate to, I was very trusting, because I was quite an honest person, ethical person, and my husband, ex-husband, was as well. And that's the way I thought the world worked. And then it was shocking to see how many people were expecting sex, on the first date, or men sending me unsolicited photos of their junk, which I didn't want to see, hadn't asked to see. And I just was like, what is actually going on here? Like, I didn't ask for this. I'm thinking, did you send this to the wrong person? Because it's not what I was looking for. But it's all kind of a learning curve. But the freedom to be able to be myself, and finally to be able to explore relationships with other women. And I had known since I was probably 12, that was something interesting to me, but I could never really accept it or think about it much because of the whole religion thing. And so to feel that I had the freedom to explore that was also just a wonderful, beautiful thing, but it couldn't really happen in a prolonged way, certainly when I was married to my husband and we were both religious.
Yeah, you couldn't possibly renegotiate that to allow you to go out and explore. Yeah. My observation of people leaving religion or getting out of religion, especially homeschool people, but equally as much for anybody that was brought up in a Jehovah's Witness, for example,
Sure.
Didn't homeschool, but still a cult, was that I've had this put in writing at a Recovery from Religion helpline. People write us and say, I got out of religion and I feel like I have been born again in a negative sense, in this sense that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing in this world. And I don't know how to negotiate it. I hardly know how to shop. I can't write a check. I never managed my finances. My husband had control of that all the time, Well, the same thing is true of sex. You get out and you were so sheltered from learning about interpersonal relationships that you are subject to predation.
Yes.
Other people. And now I will just admit I was subject to predatory women. I had, over the course of my dating life, because I dated after I got divorced the first time, I dated off and on for almost 20 years. Man, I had 3 different women that just fooled me. And I'm a damn psychologist. I should be able to see this. In every case, they tried to take advantage. I was smart enough not to let them get in too far, but it's such a shock when you realize these people are not who they say they are.
Yes. And I had that experience too.
Yeah. It's not just men or women. There's predators on both sides of that equation.
Yeah. So then you got to learn that some of the things that you had come to believe about women and sexuality actually were not necessarily true.
I learned that there's a lot of women that can outrun me. And I had an incredibly high sex drive. There are very few men I've ever known that had a high sex drive as I have, and there's still women who wanted more. So that I learned within a year or two after leaving religion. I think this ain't what Jesus told me it was all about.
Right. And I do think sometimes at different points in our lives as well, we have more or less energy that we can devote to things. When you're a parent with several small children or whatever, and you're working and whatever else is going on, sometimes you're just too freaking exhausted for that. But I would say in general, I mean, the sex that I'm enjoying now in my 50s, and I just recently remarried a couple years ago, and my husband is 22 years my senior, so he's in his 70s, and it's fantastic. It's so enjoyable, and it's so just guilt-free and so pleasure-oriented. And that's something I would like people to know. Like happiness, sexual pleasure is an inside job. You are responsible for it yourself. It's not your partner's responsibility. So it's up to us to teach our partner what feels good for us. But there's no reason that you can't, by yourself, enjoy yourself, give yourself a lot of pleasure just when you're on your own. And it's good for you. And people need to become comfortable with that idea.
That's why I start most of my talks on sexuality with, do you masturbate? I do.
Right. Yeah. And so many times we were told that it was sinful and we weren't supposed to do it. But that's really one of our very first ways of getting to know ourselves.
Yeah, I say you're the first sex partner you'll ever have, and you may be the last sex partner you'll ever have. So take that seriously. You got to become a good sex partner for yourself. And then you can teach other people how to be a good sex partner for yourself. And you can learn from other people how to be a good sex partner for them.
Yes. There's there are a couple of women, I think in San Francisco, and they run Somatica, and they offer sex workshops, and they train sex coaches, and I found them to be so refreshing, and I have encouraged some of my clients to take their training. And I was blown away by just how comfortable they absolutely are with their bodies and with the idea of pleasure. And of course, you're a human, you're going to want to experience pleasure and learn how that you can also extend pleasure to your partner. And it's just so matter of fact, rather than getting all embarrassed and not really being able to talk about it. It's just a fact of life, just like eating, it's just a lot more fun.
It is. And when I started dating, I got married briefly for 3 years, and that stopped. Dumb idea to get married the second time. That opened my eyes to a lot more. It helped me understand that monogamy is not for me. It's a stupid idea for me. I'm not saying stupid idea. I'm saying a lot of people seem to be happy with it, which is fine. But there's a lot of people out there that it's not good for. And I'm one of those people. So I determined after I got divorced the second time, because what I noticed was within a very short time, within 2 years, our sex life went from twice a day, sometimes more than that, down to twice a week. And nothing I could do could change that. It didn't matter, nothing. The switch had turned off. And that was a shock to me.
Yeah.
Because anyway, that's part of the reason I sent you that thing, is because it's not uncommon. And it happens to men and happens to women. That particular article seemed to focus on the women, but I'm telling you, men have a switch that shuts off too, or can shut off. So having experienced that, I realized that I'm not going to go through that again. I don't need that. So I then started exploring. In 1987, the first book on polyamory came out, written by Deborah Anapol, named Loving More. I read that book and I thought, damn, this is what I should do. But I didn't. And the reason for that was there was no internet. If you were going to date, you had to go to a bar or you had to go to church. I didn't want to do one of those. Or you had to put an ad in the personal section of the local newspaper. I remember. Which I did that, and I had lots and lots of dates through the personal section, and that went on for 5 or 6 years, and I really had a good time. Met lots of women, had some nice long-term kind of relationships during that time. Then but I never knew how to be honest with my partners. Never was dishonest. I didn't tell anybody, you're the only person I'm seeing. I never did that. I just didn't say, it's the silence. I had 3 other girlfriends or 2 other girlfriends, and or I was, going to parties, maybe where they were nudity or something. And I should have learned from that. Or I look back and I wish I'd have learned from that. But after the second divorce, I said, hell no, I'm going to be polyamorous. Or at least I'll try swinging. And I did. And I didn't care for swinging. I've been to many swinging parties over the years, but it's just not my thing. Here's the deal. I usually went because my partner wanted to go.
Yep.
I think probably at least 3 or 4 out of the at least 3 or 4 times that I've been to swingers parties, it was because my partner wanted to go to the swingers party, and I was humoring her, I guess you could say. Although I enjoyed it, it's not like I regret it or anything. But it told me that I got to do something besides be monogamous, and all these experiences, Janice, really helped me write that book.
Yes,
I could have written the book if I hadn't experienced alternative sexualities myself.
Right. And you touched on something that I just wanted to ask about. So you mentioned about it was often your partner who would want you to attend a swinging party with them. And something that I experienced was being in a relationship with a partner who, essentially just said, we're going to have an open relationship and that's it. And I was so scared of losing the relationship. And I also was curious, so I was open to some exploration and really had fun with some of it. But there came a point where I had felt like, for me, okay, I've scratched that itch, and maybe once in a while, but I'm not interested to keep going that way. But then my partner at the time said, "Well, I am going to keep going that way." But so I wonder, what's a way that people could introduce the concept to their partner? What are things that actually need to be done before a person does open a relationship? Because really talking about it is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to even meet people who are open to the idea of being open.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be in the right circles. Don't go to eHarmony to find somebody that might want to do swinging.
Right.
Find the right spot. I found there's a number of internet dating sites. I haven't dated in 10 or 12 years. I haven't been on the internet hardly. Well, I am on the internet. I'm just not that part of the internet.
Right.
But during that time, I found there were several websites that just kind of specialized in the areas I was interested in. So, for example, Adult Friend Finder, excellent place. At least it was 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
It was one of the very first websites that seemed to cater to people who didn't want to have, traditional vanilla relationship, monogamous relationship. So I found some of the coolest and great women on Adult Friend Finder. Another was alt.com, which was more kinky focused. But the fact is, it's like that old drunk, he's looking for his car keys underneath the street light. And you ask him, why are you looking there? It's because that's where the light is. But you got to get out, you got to go look where the keys are, not where the light is.
Right. Yes.
And I see a lot of people who don't know who they are getting out of religion. They don't know, and I see this too many times. And I want to really emphasize this. I see people leaving religion, reading about polyamory and said, "Oh, that's what I want to do."
Yes.
No. It doesn't work that way. You got to learn who you are and what you like and you don't like and what kind of people you want to be with. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be successful in polyamory at all. I don't think. Plus, this may sound like an old white guy talking, but I really think you have to have some life experience and relationship experiences before you even know where to begin in negotiating a non-traditional relationship. So, and I say that from a hell of a lot of experience with 25-year-old people wanting to be polyamorous and ending up getting into predatory relationships. Or they themselves have got mental illnesses and they're expecting this polyamorous approach to relationships to solve their problems, when no, they're bipolar and they need to do something about that.
Right.
So there's, and the other thing is, of course, people who are dissatisfied with their marriage saying, "Well, let's open it up and become swingers. So let's open up and become polyamorous." No, it doesn't work that way either. Just the unhappiness in the marriage is not going to be solved by polyamory or swinging in most cases. Look deeper, because I'm guaranteeing this, and that's another reason I sent you that article. Our belief structures are what inhibit us. It's our own inhibitions that are causing the problem. It's not the outer world. The outer world's there. I mean, the minute I opened it up, I found people.
Yeah.
But we go through life thinking, being restricted, and I'm going to speak as a man. I think many, many men go through life with patriarchal notions about their own sexuality and the sexuality of other people. Even gay men have patriarchal notions. Even gay women have patriarchal notions. And so they feel guilty. They feel shameful about things that should not be guilt-inducing or shame-inducing.
Right.
You gotta challenge the bullshit in your own head before you're going to be capable of negotiating an open, whatever you want to call it, before you a non-traditional monogamous.
Right. How do you distinguish between swinging and polyamory?
Well, this whole thing's really a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give you a definition, but I don't like to put things in too strong a box because I know polyamorous people who enjoy a little bit of swinging on the side. I know some swingers who hate the idea of polyamory. So it could be swingers are usually people who enjoy sexual variety with different and new people,
Mm-hmm.
general on a fairly regular basis, maybe several times a year or whatever. Polyamorous people generally prefer to have long-term, emotionally committed relationships within some structure and boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Who you can and can't fuck.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Whatever. I hope I'm not messing up your YouTube using my
No.
graphic language.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, I think it's important for people to learn about what some of the different options and terms that do define the different relationship, non-traditional relationship types that are out there. But I definitely am with you on cautioning people against, just they're deconstructing their religion and they're like, well, I don't want to be monogamous anymore. Let's start swinging. Let's open up our marriage. And then often you do get one partner who's just so terrified of losing the relationship. Maybe the partner has been a stay-at-home parent for all these years. They don't have a means of supporting themselves, and they're terrified that if they lose this marriage, the only relationship they've ever had, how can they support themselves? So they begrudgingly go along when it's not what they want. I mean, sex must be consensual, and let's be enthusiastic about it. If we are not interested, if we're not ready to try something, we have to be able to tell our partner that we're not there yet, and we may never be there, but let's be open to learning about the possibilities.
Yeah, that kind of leads me to something I think touches on what you just said, and that is the notion of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And in a traditional monogamous, religiously based sexuality, each person owns the other person's sexuality. I own my wife's sexuality, my wife owns my sexuality. And to me, that is incredibly destructive. So in that situation, that gives each partner a veto over the other person's sex life.
Right.
My philosophy is, it's my body, it's my choice.
Mm-hmm.
I choose to have sex with you, or I can choose not to have sex with you. I can say, I don't feel like it today. That's fine. There is nothing wrong with simply asserting your boundaries and your current level of motivation or energy or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if that implies that I then control you, I don't want sex tonight, so you can't have sex tonight.
Right.
That is a whole different level here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's where I draw the line. If if my partner is sick, I'm not going to ask her for sex. I'm not going to. That'd be nuts. It'd be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But if my partner decides, for 2 months straight that she's never in the mood for sex, then we got a problem. And it's usually a problem that's in the head. It's a problem of belief structures, or it's a problem of satiation. So let's be honest with each other. I mean, it may hurt for us to talk honestly, but I'm tired of missionary position every week. Let's try something different. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if the other person is afraid to try anything different, that's in their head.
Yes.
They need to think, okay, do I want to have adventurous, interesting, different varieties of sex or not? If I don't want that, fine, but might want to ask the question, why am I so afraid of variety in my sex life?
Yes.
Go to my missionary position training as a Christian, or
it's worth exploring.
I don't want sex tonight, and you cannot masturbate to porn because I don't want sex.
Oh, wow.
I own your body, and you can't you can't enjoy your own body because porn's wrong or whatever. And what you see that a lot in marriages.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Porn is such a huge hot button for people. And it's really frustrating. I mean, I don't have a problem at all with ethical porn. I think it can be quite helpful and quite enjoyable, provided, of course, the actors are in a safe environment where they're being adequately compensated, all those kinds of things. But you do get people who, typically it's the men feeling like they have to hide it, that they're watching it, and then the wife deciding or saying that she feels like they're cheating on her because they're watching porn. But I mean, I do recognize that there's a difference between, someone viewing porn, in the evening, here and there, versus someone who is at work and they have to constantly be going back. It's controlling their life. But I don't think that's most people. So what do you think about that?
Well, you have to ask the question, if porn is controlling your life, what is the underlying psychological issue? Let me give you an example. I have noticed this throughout my career, that when I know more about men than women, so I'm not just saying I know more about them. When a man gets divorced, he goes into oftentimes clinical depression, as women can do. How do you medicate that clinical depression? You start using porn. Your brain is saying, what happened to that sex partner that used to be around here? Your primitive brain is used to that comfort, that person, that sex, whatever it was. And when it's lost, it's like the grief process. When you start grieving, someone dies in your life, your brain says, what happened to that person? Your cognitive brain knows that person died. That's the cognitive part. But it's a primitive brain that was being stimulated every day by the presence of that person. Oxytocin was being generated because that person was around.
Right.
That's gone. Mm-hmm. So what do? I'd see men start masturbating a lot. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to take care of the loneliness. They're trying to reestablish the oxytocin that's been put into imbalance. Mm-hmm. That's just one example. I see lots of examples of people being depressed. Well, let's say I'm in a relationship with a person who doesn't want any sex. Well, what the fuck am I supposed to do if I'm prohibited from having sex anywhere else? I'm going to go have, and it's a self-medicating thing. Now, It can get out of control. I am not denying people have trouble with sex, even trouble with porn. Mm-hmm. But you know something? I'm sure you've seen this too. I don't know how many people in my career have told me, when I left religion, I lost my porn addiction.
Yes.
I've heard that hundreds of times. Mm-hmm. Now, they didn't stop using porn. They just stopped using porn compulsively. Mm-hmm. When you're in that kind of a emotional situation where you feel rejection every day from your life partner, you're going to try to compensate from that. And as a psychologist, I want to hit the root cause of something. And that's why I don't even, as you've probably heard me say many times, I don't believe in the bullshit of sex addiction. Sex addiction is a religious idea. Mm-hmm. Pull religion out of it, and now we can deal with your depression. We can deal with the loneliness you're feeling from your divorce. We can deal with the real issues, and voila, the so-called addiction just disappears or goes down to a normal level, whatever that would be for you in your situation. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, another issue that can come up related to one partner really being deeply opposed to the other partner accessing porn at all. And then suddenly they're both in jail because the one partner thinking they have to police, and they put covenant eyes. I got my quotes, air quotes, going covenant eyes on the phone or on the computer or whatever it is. I just think that is not helpful. There's an underlying issue that is driving people to do things. What's going on in the relationship? What's not happening, or what's out of sync in the relationship that one partner is sometimes we can say acting out in this way. For some people, that's what's going on. But just trying to meet their own needs in this way. And to them, I'm sure it's much better than going outside of the marriage bounds, if they're married to each other. So it's, to them, it's solving a problem. But we need to be able to talk about these things without judgment, without throwing judgment and guilt and condemnation in there. Just looking at, okay, I'm human. I have these needs. I need these needs to be met. How can I meet these needs? How can you? How can we meet them together?
From the religious perspective, if you're married to a religious person under that Christian contract, what you just said makes no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
How do we talk about alternative ways of getting our, quote, needs met? Well, Paul says you shouldn't have needs. And if you can't control yourself, then get married. And that's his only solution, was better than marry than burn. Well,
right.
I'm pretty sure Paul was gay.
I think there's a good chance.
And I think Jesus was gay too. I mean, a guy wandering around in this countryside with 12 men following him, that sounds gay to me. So, who are these people to tell us how we can do our sexuality? As I say in the book, the very first chapter, there's nothing in Christianity that is biologically sound. I mean, they didn't even know about hormones back then. And one of my pet peeves is that we've got hormones in our systems that are constantly changing and going up and going down, being stimulated by our environment, being stimulated or suppressed by our relationships. I mean, there's a lot of research that shows that the greatest testosterone suppressor is marriage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So think about this. You go through that early new relationship energy where you're romantically just infatuated with somebody, and that can go on for quite a while. And then you get married, and if you were to take the testosterone levels in both men and women, it's not just men. If you watch the testosterone, they're going up and they're staying up throughout the whole time that you're romantically infatuated with each other. You get married, and it's like, oh, we don't have to have that anymore, and the testosterone starts going down. There's a biological reason for it. Helen Fisher actually writes about this in her book, that we are, we've attached. There's attachment going on. The hormones for attachment are now secure. And there's a different set of hormones that kick in as testosterone is coming down. And as that's coming down, men become more and more amenable to caregiving for children, which that's great. You want somebody around to help you with the babies. So men and women now have, for the next 3 or 4 years, far less sex than they had to begin with, and they're paying more attention to this little one that's come into the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Biologically makes a lot of sense. But after 4 or 5 years, it stops and it starts changing, and you start wanting more variety again because those hormones come back. That's testosterone starts creeping back up, and you start thinking, wait a minute. Missionary position once a month ain't too good anymore.
Right. Yeah. And that's just physiological.
Yeah. And so what I want people to start thinking about, and why I'm so excited about talking to you today, is let's start being honest. We're fucking animals. Mm-hmm. We have these hormones. Hormones are stimulated very frequently from just the relationships we're in. Mm-hmm. So my partner comes home, and I am glad to see her. I'm retired, okay? So I don't have a lot to do all day sometimes. But I do. I help run our recovery.
Right.
And I'm glad to see her. She's tired. She's been dealing with preschoolers or elementary school kids all day. Mm-hmm. So my hormones are up. Her hormones are probably down. So we need to negotiate how we're going to satisfy each other, because she's got a high sex drive too. She just doesn't have it at the same time I've got it sometimes.
Yeah, that's what relationship includes, talking. and sharing. So there's our relationship with ourselves where we have to learn to give ourselves permission to think in a more expansive way, to try new things. We're at that buffet table of life, and religion would have us starve to death at that buffet table. So we want to do away with that, want to give ourselves permission to try everything on that table. Because you're only, you're in this body for however long, you might as well make the most of it, gather all the experiences you can. And some people are fine with monogamy. That's what they've chosen. That's what their parents chose. And they're not even curious. And that's what works for them. So they can have that. But what I want is for us not to be sitting in judgment of other people.
Yeah, I liken this to the notions of introversion and extroversion. And you can see introversion, extroversion are on a continuum. They've got people over here on the extrovert side that'll talk your leg off 24 hours a day if they can. That would be one symptom of extroversion. And persons over here who need 24 hours of quiet time before they want to encounter someone at the grocery store. That's okay. Well, we have the same. There's actually a test for this. It's called the social sexual orientation test. You can get online and get it. It's a scientifically validated test. It's been around for about 25 years. I even write about it in the book. Towards the end, I have a whole chapter on the social sexual orientation. But you take the test to learn where do you fall on this continuum of social sexual orientation. And it's actually a measure of your level of adventurousness in sex. And some people are over here, like our extroverts, they're over here wanting all sorts of adventure and sex.
Swinging from the chandelier. And you got these people over here that 2 times a month missionary position is plenty for them, maybe even too much. And they don't want any adventure. They're not going to look at porn. All those, and there's a whole range of these things. And more importantly, it can change over a lifetime. More interestingly, the research showed that in countries, regardless of the religion or regardless of the countries, men fall on a bell curve. Men just fall on that basic bell curve. However, women do not. Women fall on a bell curve that is skewed, and it's skewed one way. It's skewed down towards the restrictive. It's called restrictive sexuality in cultures like Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or India, where there's a high degree of misogynistic treatment of women. However, if women are not in those environments, it skews the other way. It's in places like Northern Germany and in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, women's social sexuality skews the other direction. And this follows a lot of research that's been going on for decades on women being the most sexually fluid of the two sexes. Right.
Men pretty much are locked into whatever sexuality by 12 or 13 years old. That's why fetishes in men don't seem to change over a lifetime. But for women, fetishes do change over a lifetime. Women can come in and go out. Some women will see themselves as more exploratory with other women at a certain age range, and back to being more heterosexual. There's even a book called Sexual Fluidity by a really interesting researcher. She wrote the book back in 2008, I think. It's just called Sexual Fluidity.
Okay.
It's a study of women over 10 years, just women. And over a 10-year time period, she showed how women changed, their sexuality changed. They may have been lesbian in high school, but they got married and they're heterosexual now. They get divorced, they go back to being lesbian.
Yeah.
You see that kind of structure or fluidity, rather, among women. You don't see that much in men.
And it's also more accepted, widely accepted in society for women to be, men, some, find it appealing and exciting at the thought of their female partner being with another woman, whereas it doesn't always go that way if the shoe's on the other foot. Men are maybe interested in a threesome if there's 2 women. They're not as interested if there's 2 men involved. And certainly that's not everyone, but I feel like that's the messaging people receive in our society. And one other thing I've found to be interesting is that Once we get into our 40s, pretty much, and the kids are, say maybe in high school or maybe they're gone to college or whatever, it's almost like women have another gear that kicks in. They start signing up for courses. They take painting classes. They're doing this and that. They really want to be engaging in life at a time when a lot of men are cooling off, in the sense that they go to work at a job maybe they don't like, or it's high stress, and then they come home, they just want to watch TV or play video games. So the woman is continuing to grow. And I also have noticed with when there's divorce that's happened, a lot of women being more open to the idea of, well, maybe I'm not straight. Maybe I'm bisexual. I'm going to explore that and see what that's like. And, many go on to have quite happy, fulfilling relationships with other women. And that's kind of that fluidity that you were talking about.
Absolutely. And men who can't get used to that idea or get comfortable with it are really fucking themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
What I've learned from personal experience, this is not clinical here. I don't have the tools to do it clinically, but is, I tell you, when a woman becomes, I don't know, 38, 40, 44 years old, whoa, that's a different animal right there. It's like the chains have come off.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that age group of women throughout my career, throughout my life as a sexual being. I got divorced when I was 38. That's when I started researching this.
Okay.
That women really, they feel like the family chains have been lifted. They're oftentimes newly divorced or divorced at least. So that piece has been lifted. They never were allowed to explore early on because they were raised in some religious environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they get out and they start exploring, and they realize, the same as I did as a male, wow, there's a whole world of relationship patterns and styles. And what I found, I'll confess a little bit of my own. I like threesomes in any variety. Two men, one woman, two women, one man. I don't care. I've had them all, and I've had them all a whole lot of different ways in my career.
Exciting.
Yeah, so it is very exciting. But what I found was that women, once they feel safe in a relationship, unless they're still infected with religious bullshit, once they feel safe and they feel safe enough to get out and explore, it's almost like having a man in their life who's not jealous, who isn't possessive, who doesn't have ownership, gives them permission to go out and explore and come back and go.
Yes.
Back.
Yes.
And that I've seen so many times in my life, for myself, but also for other friends of mine. I've got a lot of friends in the poly lifestyle, in the BDSM lifestyle. And I see that a lot. A secure relationship tends to give them a base from which to go out and explore.
Yeah.
Men, there's very few men, I'm sorry to say, there's very few men that can, quote, tolerate that are comfortable with it, that aren't threatened by it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunate for the men because they're losing out on a hell of a lot of adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, boy. Well, I mean, maybe some people will watch or listen to our discussion here, and they'll be open to having discussions of their own with their partner. That's my great hope.
Yeah, I hope they do, because we only have one life, and why are we being miserable in that life?
Exactly.
Here's an observation, and men, pay attention to this. Here's an observation I've had. I have a travel companion that okay. My good friend and travel companion, Judy, we started, my partner is Barbara. So she's here. She lives we live together. Judy and I have been traveling the world, literally the world, since 2002. We go all around the world. You see me, and I was just in Iceland, you may have seen. I've been to South Africa, Australia, South America.
Wow.
We all over Europe. We travel together. And that was the deal. When I met Barb 10 years ago, I actually met Barb through Judy. But I met Judy in late 2001, early 2002. I can't remember quite. And we dated for about a year, and we've quickly figured that we really liked traveling together, but we couldn't stand each other otherwise.
Oh, that is funny.
So she had to move away from. She was here in Kansas. She moved back to her family in Ohio, and one day she called me up and said, "Hey, I've never enjoyed traveling with anybody except you. So we want to travel together." So we made an agreement and we traveled together all over. And I told Barb, when she and I started dating, I have this travel companion, and yes, we are sexual.
Mm-hmm.
That just goes with the territory. I'm not going to travel sexually frustrated all over the world. That makes sense to me. But as we're traveling, we go in these groups. It's a small group traveling agency that we usually use, not always. And it'll be 80% women
Mm-hmm.
and 20% men.
Mm-hmm.
And I make it a point to talk to everybody. I make friends with all the people. I'm gregarious, And inevitably, the women will say, I couldn't get my husband to come with me, so I just said, screw it, I'm going alone.
That's right.
I'm going with my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
My own mother was the same way. My mother wanted to go travel Europe. She loved to travel, but she never had the opportunity, and she could not get my dad to go. So she said, screw it. She went with a group.
Good for her.
Made some lifelong friends from that, little trip to Europe. So what I see is men start shutting down.
Yes.
And that is tragic because you've got so much life to still live.
Yes.
And you're shutting yourself down by drinking too much beer, playing too many video games, watching too much TV, not exercising, getting diabetes, getting overweight, and so, any body, and I mean physical body, any body, whether it's a dog's body or a human's body, when it's neglected like that, is going to start shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
And, too much alcohol, too. I should add that.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a list of things. And if that's what you want to do with your one life, is drink extra beer and alcohol and play video games, okay. But your wife doesn't want to be like that usually. Mm-hmm. Or your partner. It may not just be a wife. Could be
Right.
But I've almost never found men on those trips that were unpartnered. It's almost always women that are unpartnered.
That is really interesting. And it's
a sample of hundreds. I'm not talking, one trip. It happens every time we go on one of these trips.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a sample of at least hundreds.
And it may even be that some of the women just want to get away from their partners because they feel like I'm with that jerk all the time. I like to take some time away. But there again, conversation and discussion about what is going on in the relationship could be helpful. I want to make sure I show everyone your book, Sex and God by Dr. Darrel Ray. It's a wonderful book. I do recommend it. I want all my clients to get it for sure. But anyone who's watching our podcast here, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I think I don't encourage people to read my book, The God Virus, too, because I think the two go together, and they don't really overlap a whole lot. I would like for people to realize if you have issues, then find some help. I will say this. Be sure if you get a therapist or if you get a marriage counselor or whatever, be sure you get somebody who's very sex positive and friendly to alternative sexualities. There's a lot of therapists out there. They even may be secular therapists, but they've got an incredibly strong bias towards Christian monogamy. Mm-hmm. And I'm not here to push polyamory. That's not my purpose. My purpose is for you to find what works for you, and you and whatever partners you choose to have. So find a good therapist. I'm guessing the person I'm talking to right now, Jen Selby, would be the best choice.
Hit me up. Yep.
So I will endorse Jenna Selby, just saying right here. And she didn't pay me. The check, do I get a check for this?
Shh. Yeah, but it'll be in Canadian.
That's all right. That's right. I don't do any of this for money. If I did, I'd be broke, and I am broke. So,
I sure appreciate your being here with me today.
Okay. how long did you want to go? A full hour?
I can, yeah, as long as you'd like to keep going. I just don't want to keep you from anything else.
I do have to be gone by 4 for sure. But there's an area you and I talked about before we came on that I want to explore.
Sure.
Some of the people that might be listening might be our age. Now, I'm 73, you're 39, so I'm guessing.
I'm 54. Those are my birthday flowers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I miscalculated there. I joke that I'm 39 and holding, and I try to live up to that. I went out and ran 2 miles yesterday, and
I'm good for you.
I can do 50 push-ups. I'm pretty.
Oh my gosh! You got to keep that stamina up. That's right.
Well, I don't know when I'm going to die, but I'm going to die healthy. Mm-hmm. That's my philosophy. I'm going to die healthy. Mm-hmm. So when we first talked about doing this, we talked about growing sex as older.
Yeah.
And I want to be sure we talk about that because I don't see anybody talking about that.
Yes, sex and aging.
And we are both in a spot where our bodies have changed quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I'm speaking personally. Darrel's body has changed. Mm-hmm. I can see it. Viagra is my salvation. I'm really glad that they invented that.
Yeah.
Or Cialis or whatever you choose to use. And women, help your men get comfortable with that because some men are just too ashamed to say, yeah, I need some help because our bodies just don't respond. It takes a lot longer to get an erection than I used to, even with. So I'm not ashamed of it. That's the way the body's working when you're sex free. But I don't see any reason to quit having sex because of the miracle of medicine gives us, the equivalent of glasses.
That's right.
I'm having trouble wearing glasses.
Yeah.
Not ashamed of wearing glasses. And your body needs glasses in order to perceive the world. Well, your body needs some sexual stimulation through Cialis or Viagra or something. So that would be my number one is let's get comfortable with the fact that our bodies have changed. We ain't 17 years old anymore. And we still have a desire for sex. I walk down the street, I see an attractive woman. At 17, I would have gotten an erection. Now I just say, damn, that looks good.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then I come home and I tell my partner, whoa, I saw this hot woman today. You want to get in bed? And she says, yes. She wants to take advantage of that. I said, well, give me an hour because I got to get the Cialis in my system. So just being comfortable with our bodies at the age that we are. And the fact that the testosterone in my bloodstream is far lower than it was when I was 30 or 40 years old. There's nothing wrong with that. I used to be able to have sex 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. When I was in my 30s and early 40s, there was hardly many women complained that I wanted too much sex, no matter how much they wanted. Although I did say there were a few that outdid me.
Right. You hardly had time for work. Oh my God.
Hey, I still did pretty damn well during that time. But the fact was that as I got older, my sexual energy went down. My sexual interest still is there. It may not be as high. I mean, I still look at an attractive person and find myself thinking about it.
Yeah.
But your sexual energy goes down. So talking it through, rather than just saying, oh, my wife doesn't want sex, so I won't do it anymore. I think you can keep that going. You can just negotiate. I've only got about enough sex for twice a week now, or as much energy. And I'm best in the morning, not in the evening. I can, if we're both excited, we can make it happen in the evening. I don't come as easy as I used to. In fact, I may not come at all. I have learned, and this is interesting for you guys out there. Women will keep having orgasms until they die, I think. But men, it gets harder and harder and I've had a lot of men come to me who are older, my age or even older, and say, well, I love sex. I want to have sex, but I can't come hardly at all.
Right.
Okay, well, have fun. Just enjoy the sex.
Right.
Sex is not all about the orgasm.
That's right.
And here's the other thing. You can satisfy yourself later. You don't have to have penetrative orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can ask your partner to help you have your orgasm, or maybe you can, go have an orgasm somewhere else afterwards. It's up to you because it's your body. Don't hold your partner accountable for your orgasm.
Exactly. Yes. And you mentioned Viagra and Cialis, and also certainly cock rings can be very helpful for the blood, for the erection. And again, not to feel embarrassed or ashamed about it, but just to be, frank with your partner. This is what it's like when you get older.
Okay, you just brought up I got this hilarious story. It wasn't hilarious when it happened. But I had this girlfriend. She and I, this is 1992. She and I had been dating for about a year, and she had this great job that gave her free rooms at very high-end hotels.
Nice.
She booked events for her company, so she would get the benefit. So she got this ritzy hotel room right here in town. She said, let's go have a weekend and, screw each other's brains out. Well, she decides she wants to try a cock ring on me. I didn't ask for it. I had never used a cock ring. I'm 42 years old. I don't need a cock ring, right?
Right.
She wants to try it. I'm humoring her, so to speak. And after about 3 times, I'm getting, I need a little help. So she said, "Oh, let's use a cock ring." She puts a damn cock ring on me, and we go at it. And then it won't go down.
Oh, no.
It won't go down.
Oh.
I am starting to panic.
Yes. Yes.
And she had the good sense to say, "Hey, I think I know what to do." And she got some baby oil or something, went out of her purse and put it on. We got it right off then. But that was hilarious. But we got finished. We were just sitting there. We couldn't stop laughing. Our stomachs hurt so bad from that.
Oh my God. And I know that actually that's a warning that they do give related to some of the pills that a man can end up with an erection that lasts several hours. So, read the instructions, read the directions. I think that's very funny. I'm glad that you can laugh about it now, and that you had a partner that you could also laugh about it with.
She was really great. I really enjoyed her a lot.
Yeah, and I would say for women, as we age, really lube is our friend. Our natural lubrication, we tend to produce less of it, and you really want sex to be utterly enjoyable. You don't want it to hurt when you're talking about penetration. And so, use lots and lots, copious amounts of lube. Get a towel ready, have a towel on the bed if that, if you're concerned about your sheets or whatever, but really be thinking about yourself and what's going to feel good for you. So that's my recommendation.
And for women, I would advise, or I would suggest that you get really comfortable teaching your partner how to manipulate your body and what it takes.
Yes.
And I think some women, different things work for different people.
Uh-huh.
I know some women just like lots of kissing and fondling and maybe breast play with nothing else for a while, and then maybe going down and playing with their clit. Or some women like to have their clit licked. Some women don't like that at all. You just have to talk about all this. And here's the cool thing. The more you talk about it, the more you get stimulated by it.
That's right.
Unless you got bullshit going around your head. Right. And then you start saying, I've had clients come to me and say, "Well, I just can't do that because I keep getting these ideas. That's filthy. That's dirty. You shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that." Well, that is going to inhibit your ability to communicate. And you need to open yourself up to at least one thing at a time. Maybe you don't have to do it all, but at least read some books together, or try one little thing together. Try licking her clit for just 1 minute. I mean, whatever that is, whatever it is, but just try one little thing, because your brain you're trying to repattern your brain.
Yes. From
the patterns that were created by this insidious purity culture bullshit.
Yes.
And I think open talking, just like you and I are talking right now, openly talking about, and what do you like? What stimulates you? And another thing is, I've had several girlfriends just fucking loved watching porn together.
Yes.
That got them stimulated.
Yes.
I'd never done that before. And I had a, I won't say girlfriend because it didn't turn out the way I'd hoped it would, but the first time we had sex, she said, we were in a hotel together. And she said, you want to watch the hotel? You want to watch the movie? I said, well, I was ready to screw. Why do I watch a movie?
Right.
To the porn. This is back in the old days when, they had porn on the, she turned that on and said, let's watch that. Boy, I tell you, within 10 minutes, we were screwing. Okay.
Yes.
That got her going, got me going too, because I'd never had a woman do that. Ask me. And after that, I realized that is powerful. She chose the porn she wanted to watch.
Yeah.
Got her going. And then we pretty much ignored the damn movie. We were once going. It didn't matter what the movie was.
But it took a conversation. It took her being willing to ask the question. And I think that's so important when we're getting to know someone and we're in relationship with someone. Bring up the topic and ask them, well, do they enjoy porn? Would they like to watch it together? They can, and then you don't even have to say, what kind would you like? You can say, well, why don't you choose whatever you choose? I'll watch it. Obviously, if there's something that we've been traumatized or something we don't want to see, then we share that with them. But just being able to talk about it, because your partner is not a mind reader. Nobody is a mind reader. And because our bodies are so different and we respond differently to things, something that works on another partner might not work for you for a whole bunch of different reasons. So it's up to us to teach our partner and train our partner what feels good for us. And then to ask for their feedback also. Let me know what feels good for you, because I don't know.
Yeah, I had a woman years ago that loved breast play, but only after she was turned on everywhere else. Then she loved it, but don't dare touch her breasts until because that would get you totally rejected.
Oh, so she had to let you know that.
Yeah, she did. And that was good. I mean, that little piece of communication told me a lot, that gave us all sorts of options. I mean, it actually redirected my attention to where it should have been. And that is what turned her on, what made her feel good. I want to add one more thing, and that is for everybody, no matter what age. And that is, there is something called a BDSM checklist. And I found out about these back about 2001, and I started using them. I would not date a woman until, if we're interested in each other, then I'm going to say, okay, but I don't even want to start if we're not compatible, at least sexually compatible. So, and if that was too much for them, fine, I'm going to go on. I literally don't want to. I've been married twice to people who were, uptight about certain
You were
things.
Mismatched. Yeah.
I was mismatched. So, I would email it to them, or I'd send them the link to it. Some of them are online. I don't care which one you use, but it's a checklist you can do online. It's got about everything you can imagine sexually, and you put on there, have you ever tried it or not? Do you want to try it or not? Do you like it or not? How much do you like it or not? Every single thing has got like 3 or 4 different things you have to answer. One of them had 169 different things.
Oh my gosh.
Everything from you like sucking cock, or you like to have your cock sucked, depending on which way you go, of course, or if you like anal sex, or you like breast play, do you like to be spanked? You name it, all these things. And some of it will turn you off. No, I am absolutely not interested in being tied up and whipped.
Right.
And the next person will say, well, it's not sex if you're not tied up and whipped.
Right.
So,
yes.
I have literally had women say, well, it's not sex if I haven't been spanked.
I love that idea, the BDSM checklist. And I know some of the folks I've worked with recovering from purity culture, we talk about sexual values checklist. And I always recommend Erica Smith has spoken at a number of my events as well, and she has Purity Culture Dropout program, and I just highly recommend. I love Erica, and I love the work that she's doing. This has been so interesting. Is there anything else that you want to tell
one more
people?
thing?
Yeah, for sure.
One way to reduce your anxieties and reduce your inhibitions is to actually get out of the house and go to a swingers party. Mm-hmm. Get out of the house and go to a polyamory meetup. Go somewhere. Go to a stripper bar together. And just be in a place where sex is just there. People have got their clothes off. People are comfortable in who they are. And you don't have to participate. You can go to a swingers party and not participate. You can just stand around and watch with your partner, and it'll give you ideas. It'll stimulate you. You'll come back and talk about it later. That will help you realizing I've been in swingers party. There were 600 people in the ballroom of a hotel.
Wow.
New Year's Eve. It was a swinger New Year's Eve party right here where I live.
Wow.
So 600 other people naked doing whatever they're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. It's all consensual, and it's all enthusiastically consensual.
Yes.
So that really trips the triggers in your mind. I'm guaranteeing if you go to even one of those, whether you ever go to another one again, it will change your mind about human sexuality.
Yes.
So stop. You don't have to read books. You don't have to listen to podcasts. You don't have to listen to this. Just get out and do something. Okay, that's my last thing. I've gone on way too long, but I thank you for having me on.
Well, you mentioned, we both talked about how important it is to talk about sex with our partner. And I would say I also love talking about it after, when we're having dinner or the next morning and saying how much I enjoyed what we did last night. And it normalizes it and it brings all the feel-good feelings back up. So I recommend that. And there's sex stores everywhere in most communities. You're going to have a sex store with toys and lube and whatever else. Do yourself a favor and your partner a favor. Go there together. The people working there are usually pretty cool and knowledgeable, and they're happy to show you things. And so do take that step for yourself. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. It was great to see you today. I'll see you again soon. And Darrel, hang on just 1 minute because I'm going to ask you a question. And I hope that you'll answer it. A little bit spicy. This part's going to be for the members only of the Conference on Religious Trauma YouTube channel. Thanks so much, Darrel. I really appreciate this. And we'll send people over to recoveringfromreligion.org as where they can find everything about the work that you do, the work that you've built. And thanks again, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take care, Darrel.